In this video, we're going to discuss loving relationship, how relationship can be based on friendship, mutual respect and expectation, and grow into a working relationship that makes life easier for both of you. I'm Professor Chi. I help people raise their vibration. We're going to get started in this video right now.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about love. It's such a great thing.
Love is grand. Love is grand.
Love is grand. And I think people tend to think that you're going to find it like a fairy tale and all of a sudden magic will happen. I don't know if that's really true.
Kind of magical.
It's magical. But what I sort of think about is that you bring the magic to love.
Yes.
And that no matter who it is, of course, you're going to need somebody that you can get along with and live with. But I feel so many people are outrageous in their needs and wants.
And expectations.
Gee, we're only human here. So the magic has to come from you a little bit for it to last. How can you have expectations of another person to keep that magic in your life for a lifetime, which is what marriage is supposed to be? So if people would have more of a realistic feeling about that, they could actually claim some of the blame when it leaves or when it comes in. So I feel like people have more control with love than what people all of a sudden love descends on you like some kind of cloud.
Well, love is more of a partnership, and you're responsible for your own orgasms, and you have a feeling of continuity, and that continuity is what is grand. It's not the highs and lows, because they'll come. You're going to be unhappy sometimes, but you would be unhappy if you were alone. Love is a hope of something to share. You know, you can share it. There are negative things. For instance, we're both getting snaggly teeth. We didn't have before. Her teeth were totally straight, and I had the buck teeth, and now hers were getting a little snaggly. You know, somehow you start to share things that you weren't really expecting.
And that day when you decide that this is the person you're going to spend your life with and you're going to take your vows together, I almost feel that all that hopes are rather it's rather lofty goals for humans, because we're really just sharing a space together for the rest of your life, supposedly. And I think more people would be less disappointed and more responsible for that happiness that they share with somebody else if you bring that in and not expect that to come from somebody else. It's a mutual understanding, though. I don't think people can have this by themselves without a partner that shares that feeling. But we have come to the point where people seem like it's too much trouble to be with another, and where is that going to lead? Because so many people are not choosing, let's say, to get married and have kids, and that they're better off on their own because they can't find anybody to get along with.
Well, and perhaps, like, we started out so young, we were together really young before we had formulated a lot of expectation. So there might be something to that. It becomes more and more difficult to fall in love as you get older because, well, face it, you have a better idea of what you want. You know, we fell in love right away, and we just liked each other right away. So perhaps we are fortunate. There's a certain amount of fortune, I believe, with relationship, perhaps.
True. But the thing about this is, too, people think, oh, you have to have things in common and all these things have to come together to have this perfect relationship. I don't believe that.
No.
I think that, yes, when you are young, you're more willing to overlook another's flaws because you're in love. If you're waiting to like 30 or 35 to figure out that it's difficult to find somebody to love, well, no wonder. If there was any advice I'd give is fall in love when you're young. Find somebody when you're young. Why look around for the perfect person to be with? They don't exist.
Well, furthermore, they don't exist, and the perfect relationship doesn't exist. And perhaps the most important thing is to be alone together, to have interests. We have commonality. We have things in common. We love to hike. We love the same kind of food. And the day-to-day things, I think, are really important to have in common. But we have very vastly different interests. You know, I mean, we have our own life as well, and there's places where our separate lives intersect, but fortunately, there is more to it than that.
It's sort of like this. Think about two trees growing together and gathering all of the nutrients and water and things that it needs to grow and creating leaves and blossoms in the branches
and fruit.
From there, you grow wood. You layer on that wood. And when you're together as a couple, that's basically what you're doing. You're creating this history together, which is your wood. And finding that when you can is so rich. It's going to enrich your life so much. And so when I hear people talking about, oh no, that I can't do that, it's broke my heart too many times, I feel like, for one, lower your expectation
a little,
find commonality, but then you've got to grow,
and you have to make room for each other's roots, because if there's anything that's difficult in a long-term relationship, it's the roots. I mean, where you came from. That if the most difficult thing in our nearly 40 years of being together is our families, the families we came from, not the family we've created. The family we've created, we've always gotten along. You know, we get along. Our sons, they're a lot of fun to be around, always have been. Not that there hasn't been problems, because there are definitely problems, but making peace with where you've come from. And perhaps many people run into lots of problems later on because they didn't take that into account when you start out. And that's the reason why, like, people that meet in a church, perhaps they get along a lot better because they have that in common and they have the common values. And you don't really pick up on people's values when you first meet them. That takes about 10 years. About 10 years down the road, you start to realize, she really doesn't see it the way I see it. You know? And that, making peace with that is probably what gets you over the hump past that first 10 years. And you know, perhaps, you know, we're gloating a little, but now that all these years have gone by, it's really nice to have somebody.
Or in that same vein, with the family or the roots that you came from, you have to be able to give that up a little bit.
Yes.
You can't hang on to those earthly families from your past and expect that 10 years when you figure out that family isn't exactly conducive to your relationship. You have to be able to give up things like that and create the now for the couple, instead of, oh, this person, he's fitting into my family and this is, everybody here is gonna work out nicely, because that doesn't work very often.
No, it doesn't work. And a lifetime of being together is another life. A relationship is a life. There's a separate entity in the relationship. I have my life, I have my ideas, I have my feelings, I have my thoughts. Sage Bear has hers, and then together there's this William and Jenniness, this Professor Chi and Sage Bear reality that is what's happened, the synthesis of those two lives coming together. that has to be more of the focus and less of, oh gosh, I used to be like this, and I used to be able to do this until I met you, and boy, it was so much easier before we had kids. And I mean, there's an evolution, and the evolution has to be kept in mind day to day.
If there was anything truer in marriage vows, then it's the saying, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. Because inevitably, that's what a couple goes through, and that's where I think people give up a little bit and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. That if you can push yourself a little bit beyond that, through those times where you want to give up, it's being it's being more real. Because we don't come here for perfection. We don't. We come here to experience life, and relationships are part of that life. And the good, the bad, the rich, the poor, the sickness and the health are going to be in the package.
And being a human, we come here to be a human being. And being a human being is about limitations. So, and this is not for everybody, but for the people that want a relationship, and not just the marital relationship, but a relationship is the best hope of becoming a human being. Because a human being isn't alone. Right? That's not a human being. A human being is with other human beings. And we deal with limitations, we deal with evolution, we deal with change, we deal with sharing.
The nicest thing where I really feel like people that think, oh, I can do it all by myself, is that when you are with another person, you can let down and that other person can sort of take over for you. In other words, you can be the half and the other person's the half, so you don't have to be strong all the time.
And you have somebody to dump on. Don't underestimate that. A lot of people are ornery in life because they don't have an understanding mate. And by the way, you can have a mate and you can't dump on them. But the ability to have a bad day and then have somebody to dump on about it, and I don't mean come home and be a complete a-hole about it, but to be able to share the frustrations of the day is invaluable. It's invaluable. Yeah.
And that I'm strong. I can do it all. Especially when you're young, you really do feel like that. And I think more and more these days, because you're like, and all these relationships, he just wants this or she wants that. It's really coming together for mutual understanding, in that you take half, I take the other half, and then we become a whole.
And if you're strong, I can be weak, and if I'm weak, you can be strong, and that you do some things better than I do, and I do some things better than you do. Two people that want to work together are always going to be stronger than one.
They should almost call marriage a work. Yeah. Or a job. Yeah. Because that's kind of what it is in a way, if you're willing to see it that way.
Well, like that Korean wedding we went to, there, if they smile during the ceremony, it's considered bad luck for the marriage. They say, oh yeah, this is about work. This is about a relationship, a working relationship. If you come at it from that, rather than, oh, you're supposed to fulfill all my needs, and you're supposed to satisfy me completely, especially sexually, and all that. Well then.
But we start out that way.
Yeah,
we have this fairy tale weddings and the white dress, and everything has to be perfect, and the music and the doves and the butterflies, and we're all here together being this incredible moment. Well, be careful of those.
Yeah.
It's almost like, what are we kidding ourselves with those marriage, those fancy marriages? What is the purpose of that?
Well, again, back to how this conversation began. Love is grand.
Love is grand. It is worth it.